Chapter 1, The River That Remembered. The Gallera River never forgave anyone. Liam Everheart had heard that sentence 100 times in the colony mess hall, always delivered with the same half-whisper, the same sideways glance toward the forest. The river was a graveyard with a pulse. It took survey teams, lovers on midnight walks, even a whole supply shuttle that tried to cross too low. Their names were carved on a steel plate outside the reactor dome, and every new colonist was marched past it on arrival day so the lesson sank in. Stay away from the Gallera. Liam had nodded like everyone else, but the warning never stuck. Something in him had always leaned toward the edge of things, toward the places people said were impossible. Maybe it was because Earth had already felt too small, too mapped, too safe. Maybe it was because his mother's last message, the one that arrived 6 months after she died of the lung rot back on Terra, still lived in his comm implant. Don't waste your life fixing other people's machines, Liam. Go somewhere that scares you. So when the power grid threw another tantrum and the chief engineer screamed at him for 12 straight hours, Liam did what he always did. He walked. The trail to the cliffs was steep, cut into black volcanic rock that drank the heat of Hestia Fifth's twin suns. His boots knew every route. His lungs remembered the thin, sweet air that tasted of sap and distant lightning. 3 years on this world, and he still caught himself searching the lavender sky for contrails that would never come again. Home was a memory that hurt in quiet moments, like a bruise you keep pressing just to feel something real. He reached the cliff edge as the first sun kissed the horizon, bleeding crimson across the treetops. The second sun followed, smaller, fiercer, turning the Gallera into a ribbon of liquid fire far below. 30 meters down, the water roared against stone older than humanity. Liam closed his eyes and let the sound drown the day, the burnt wiring smell still clinging to his skin, the tremor in his hands from too much caffeine and not enough sleep, the hollow ache that had lived under his ribs since the colony ship left Sol forever. He was tired of being useful and nothing more. Then the forest went quiet. Not the usual evening hush when the day insects clocked off and the night chorus tuned up. This was sudden, absolute, the way the world stops breathing right before lightning strikes. Even the wind held its tongue. A sound rose from the gorge, raw, broken, wrong. A roar that wasn't a roar. Pain and panic braided together into something almost human. Liam's eyes snapped open. He dropped to his stomach and crawled to the edge, heart already sprinting ahead of him. The whirlpool in the bend of the river churned like a living wound. And in its center fought something magnificent. It was dying. He knew it the way you know a song is ending when the last note cracks. The creature was enormous, twice the mass of any Earth predator, built like a leopard carved from moonlight and nightmare. Its fur caught the dying light and threw it back in impossible colors, deep indigo bleeding into silver, emerald veins pulsing beneath the surface like rivers of their own. A tail thick as Liam's thigh lashed the water, trying to find purchase that wasn't there. Claws the length of combat knives raked the air, searching for a sky that wouldn't help. It surfaced again, and this time its eyes found him. Green. Not emerald, not jade, something brighter, hotter, alive in a way that made Liam's chest cave in. Those eyes weren't animal. They were afraid. They were begging. Please. He didn't decide. There was no moment of weighing risk against sense. There was only the sudden, ferocious certainty that if this creature died while he watched from safety, something inside him would die with it, something he hadn't even known was still breathing. Liam was moving before the thought finished forming. Pack thrown aside. Boots kicked off. Jacket abandoned. The comm link, his only line to the colony, left blinking uselessly on the clifftop like a discarded toy. He stood on the edge in nothing but work trousers and the thin thermal shirt that had once been gray, now stained forever with coolant and loneliness. The creature sank again. Liam jumped. The fall stole his breath, replaced it with terror sharp as broken glass. Then the river hit him, cold enough to feel like burning. The impact punched every thought from his skull. For a moment there was only darkness and the roar of water that sounded exactly like his mother screaming his name the day the doctors said there was nothing left to try. He kicked upward, lungs already on fire. Broke the surface gasping, was dragged under again. The current played with him the way a cat plays with a half-dead mouse. He let it spin him once, twice, using the whirlpool's own fury to sling him closer to the center. There. A flash of iridescent fur. He lunged, fingers clawing through freezing water until they closed around something solid, warm, alive, trembling. The creature's neck. Muscle like braided steel under silk. It thrashed once, nearly drowning them both, then felt his grip and went still. Not surrender. Trust. Liam wrapped both arms around its neck, pressed his cheek to wet fur that smelled of ozone and wild places, and kicked for shore with everything he had left. He didn't feel the cold anymore. He didn't feel his legs cramping or the rocks tearing his skin. There was only the weight in his arms, massive, impossible, and the knowledge that if he let go, those green eyes would never open again. His foot found mud. Then more mud. He hauled them forward one agonizing pull at a time until the river finally spat them out onto the bank like something it had tried and failed to digest. They collapsed together. Liam rolled onto his back, coughing water and maybe tears. The sky above was bruised violet now, the first stars pricking through like accusations. His body felt flayed, but his heart, God, his heart was too full for the size of his chest. A low, rumbling exhale beside him. Warm breath against his ear. He turned his head. The creature lay on its side, chest heaving, water streaming from its fur in silver rivulets. Up close it was even larger, 6 feet at the shoulder, maybe more. Power and grace braided so tightly they were the same thing. Blood darkened one flank where the rocks had bitten deep, but the wounds were already closing, edges glowing faintly like embers under ash. It watched him. Not with gratitude, something deeper. Recognition. As if it had been waiting a very long time for someone reckless enough, foolish enough, human enough to jump. Liam laughed once, a cracked sound that hurt his throat. "You're welcome," he rasped. The creature lowered its massive head and rested its chin across his chest, gentle, careful, the way you lay a hand on a friend who's crying too hard to speak. Its weight pinned him to the mud and somehow made breathing easier than it had been in years. That was when he saw the collar. Dark metal, almost black, fused seamlessly around the thick neck. Symbols etched into its surface glowed with soft inner light, pale blue, heartbeat slow. Not decoration. Not primitive. Technology so advanced it looked like magic. Liam's fingers trembled as he reached out, stopping millimeters away. The creature didn't growl. It simply watched, waiting to see what he would do with the truth now that he'd found it. He let his hand fall. Not yet. Above them, the second sun slipped away and night folded its wings over the forest. Somewhere far off, something howled, a sound of hunger and mourning braided together. The creature's ears flicked, but it didn't move. It stayed with its head on Liam's chest, sharing warmth, sharing silence. Liam stared at the stars he didn't know the names of yet and felt something inside him crack wide open. He had come to Hestia Fifth to fix machines. Instead, the planet had sent him something that needed saving, and in the saving, had reached straight into his guarded heart and refused to let go. Whatever this creature was, wherever it came from, whoever had put that collar around its neck and set it adrift in the cruelest river on the continent. They had just made a terrible mistake. Because Liam Everheart didn't know how to walk away from broken things. Especially when they looked at him like he was the first light they'd seen in 1,000 years of darkness. Chapter 2, The Weight of a Name. The night on Hestia Fifth was never truly dark. 3 moons, one silver, one rust-red, one the color of old bruises, hung low, bleeding soft light across the riverbank. Bioluminescent moss glowed beneath the mud like scattered embers. Every breath Liam took tasted of cold water, blood, and something electric that raised the hairs on his arms. He was shaking. Not from the cold anymore. From the creature's head still resting on his chest, rising and falling with his own ragged breaths. From the way its warmth had seeped through his soaked shirt and settled against the hollow place he usually kept locked. He didn't want to move. If he moved, the moment would end. The moment when, for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't alone. But the creature lifted its head. Slowly, deliberately. Its green eyes, God, those eyes, searched his face as though memorizing it. Then it stood. The motion was fluid, impossible for something so large. Moonlight slid across its fur in liquid waves, sapphire, amethyst, molten silver. The wounds on its flank had closed to thin silver lines that shimmered when it breathed. It took one step back, then another, and looked at him. Follow. Liam laughed, a cracked sound that startled nightbirds into flight. You're kidding, right? I can barely stand. The creature simply waited. Patient. Certain. He pushed himself up on trembling arms. The world tilted, then righted itself. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who'd been born tired. Blood crusted his forearms where rocks had kissed him on the way out of the river. But the creature was already moving, slow enough for him to keep pace, and something in Liam, pride, stubbornness, or the simple terror of being left behind, made him follow. They walked along the bank, the Gallera's roar fading to a sullen grumble behind them. The creature, he needed a name, couldn't keep thinking of it as the creature, moved like a shadow given muscle and will. Every few steps it glanced back, checking he was still there. Not leading. Escorting. After 10 minutes Liam's teeth started chattering so hard he tasted blood where he'd bitten his tongue. The creature noticed, of course it noticed, and angled toward a stand of trees whose trunks glowed faint gold. It nosed aside curtains of hanging moss and revealed a hollow beneath the roots, warm and dry, smelling of earth and faint cinnamon. Liam crawled in without thinking. The space was just big enough for both of them if the creature curled around him. Which it did. He should have been terrified. Instead he felt safe. Safer than he'd ever felt inside the colony's steel walls. The creature settled its massive head across his thighs, a living furnace. Its breath was warm against his stomach. One huge paw rested gently over his heart, claws sheathed, as if it understood exactly how fragile humans were. Liam's fingers found the edge of the collar again. This time the creature didn't warn him off. The metal was warm, warmer than the fur, and the symbols pulsed under his fingertips like a second heartbeat. He traced one slowly. "Who did this to you?" he whispered. The creature made a sound, low, mournful, almost a sigh. Then it did something that broke Liam's heart clean in two. It pressed its forehead to his and closed its eyes. Images flooded him, not words, not pictures exactly, but feelings sharp enough to cut. Darkness. Cold metal corridors that smelled of ozone and fear. A small hand, lavender-skinned, 6 tiny fingers, clutching fur that hadn't yet learned its colors. A voice, musical and breaking. "Protect her, my brave one. Whatever the cost. Promise me." Then fire. Ships tearing the sky. A pod closing like a coffin. The creature's roar of grief as it was torn away from that small hand. The connection snapped. Liam gasped, tears sudden and hot on his frozen cheeks. He hadn't cried since the day they told him his mother was gone. Now he couldn't stop. "I'm sorry," he choked out, fingers buried in the thick ruff around the creature's neck. "I'm so sorry." The creature nuzzled him, gentle as snowfall, and licked a single tear from his jaw. Its tongue was rough and warm and tasted faintly of starlight. Liam laughed through the tears. "You need a name," he said, voice thick. "Can't keep calling you, you. He thought of guardians in old Earth stories, silent, fierce, loyal beyond reason. Then he thought of the way it had looked at him on the cliff, pleading, and how he had jumped without hesitation. "Kai," he said suddenly. "It's an old word from home. Means sea. Because you move like water, beautiful and unstoppable. And because I pulled you out of the dark current, and you pulled me out too." The creature, Kai, rumbled, deep in his chest. Approval. Acceptance. A name freely given was a bond on 100 worlds, and apparently on this one too. Liam leaned back against the warm curve of Kai's body and let exhaustion take him. Just before sleep dragged him under, he felt Kai shift, curling tighter, one massive paw still over his heart as if to say, "I've got you now. Sleep." Somewhere outside, a night predator screamed and was answered by Kai's low, warning growl that vibrated through both their bones. The screaming stopped. Liam smiled into the dark. For the first time since leaving Earth, he didn't dream of empty skies and graves. He dreamed of green eyes that trusted him completely, and a small lavender hand reaching through fire, and the weight of a name that meant he was no longer alone. Chapter 3, The Vault Beneath the Roots. Dawn on Hestia Fifth came sideways. The first sun slipped between the trunks like liquid gold, painting the inside of their hollow in slow, honeyed light. The second sun followed an hour later, angry and red, turning every droplet on Kai's fur into a tiny flame. Liam woke to warmth, to the steady drum of an alien heart beneath his cheek, to the soft huff of breath across his hair. He didn't move for a long time. He was afraid the night had been a fever dream, that he would open his eyes and find only mud and loneliness. But Kai was real, the rise and fall of that massive ribcage, the low, contented rumble that vibrated through both of them like distant thunder trapped inside a cathedral. Kai's eyes opened, molten green, soft with sleep, and met his. Something passed between them, wordless and ancient. Gratitude. Promise. A question neither of them knew how to ask yet. Then the collar flared. The symbols woke all at once, bright as welding sparks. Kai stiffened, ears flattening. A low whine rose in his throat, not pain, but urgency. He rose in one fluid motion, careful not to crush Liam, and nosed at the hollow's entrance. The message was unmistakable. "We have to go. Now." Liam's body protested every movement. His muscles had turned to rusted cable overnight, his skin mapped with bruises the color of storm clouds. But the look in Kai's eyes, pleading, protective, terrified, lit a fire under him hotter than any pain. He crawled out into the morning. The forest smelled of wet stone and crushed sap. Birds with crystal wings scattered overhead like shattered chandeliers. Kai waited until Liam was steady on his feet, then pressed his great head against Liam's chest for a heartbeat, just one, before turning and leading the way deeper into the trees. They moved fast. Faster than Liam thought possible. Kai chose paths no human would have seen, narrow deer trails hidden under curtains of glowing moss, fallen logs bridged by vines thick as his thigh. Whenever Liam stumbled, Kai was there, shoulder offered like a living crutch, tail curling around his waist to steady him. The collar's symbols pulsed brighter with every kilometer, a beacon and a countdown. By the time the third moon was a pale ghost overhead, Liam's lungs were raw and his legs shook with every step. He was about to beg for rest when the ground changed. The trees grew older here, so old their trunks had split and healed 100 times, bark scarred with glowing lichen that formed patterns almost like writing. The air itself felt heavy, reverent. Kai slowed, shoulders rolling with tension, and pushed through a final wall of silver ferns. Liam stopped breathing. Before them rose a structure that had no business existing on a colony world. It was half swallowed by the planet, roots braided through its walls, moss thick as carpets on its roof, but the lines were too perfect, too deliberate. Black metal veined with living light. A single circular door 20 meters high, etched with the same symbols that circled Kai's throat. They blazed now, fierce and welcoming. Kai made a sound Liam had never heard from him, half sob, half prayer, and bounded forward. He pressed his forehead to the door the way he had pressed it to Liam's the night before. Light exploded outward, soft and white and warm. The door opened without a sound. Cool air breathed over them, carrying scents Liam had no names for: ozone, old paper, something like childhood summers he'd never actually had. Inside was a single vast chamber lit from within. The floor was polished stone that reflected starlight that shouldn't exist underground. Along the walls, crystalline panels flickered with moving glyphs. And in the center, on a dais of black glass, stood a stasis pod. It was beautiful and terrible. Transparent as ice, yet humming with power. Inside floated a child. She was small, no more than 6 or 7 Earth years, her skin the color of dawn through lilac. Long silver-white hair drifted around her face as if she lay underwater. Her chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of centuries, not minutes. Delicate 6-fingered hands were curled against her heart, clutching something that glowed faintly, a shard of crystal no larger than a tear. Kai walked forward until his nose almost touched the pod. A tremor ran through his entire body. He looked back at Liam, eyes shining with something too raw to be called hope. Liam's own heart cracked open all over again. He stepped closer. The pod's surface was warm. When his palm rested against it, the crystal shard inside the child's hands flared, bright, 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 and the symbols on the walls began to sing. A voice, soft, musical, ancient, filled the chamber. Not sound exactly. Memory made audible. Guardian, it said, and Kai whined, pressing harder against the pod. You have brought the key-bearer. The circle begins again. Liam didn't understand the words, but he felt them in his bones. He looked at Kai, really looked, and saw the truth written in every trembling muscle. This child was why Kai had been collared. This child was why he had been thrown into the river like bait. This child was the reason Kai had trusted a half-drowned human with his life. Liam's hand slid from the pod to Kai's neck, fingers threading through wet fur. You kept your promise, he whispered. You brought someone. You brought me. Kai leaned into him, a shudder running from nose to tail. For the first time since the river, the great beast looked small. The pod began to open. Frost hissed outward in delicate spirals. The child's eyes, violet, luminous, far too old for her face, fluttered open. She drew a breath that sounded like the first one ever taken on this world, and her gaze found Kai instantly. A smile broke across her face, small, fierce, radiant. Then she saw Liam, and the smile faltered into wonder. She sat up slowly, legs dangling over the edge of the pod like any sleepy child, and spoke in a voice made of bells and starlight. You jumped, she said in perfect, accented English. I felt it. All the way down here, through the dark, I felt someone jump for him. Liam's throat closed. He managed a rough nod. The child slipped from the pod and walked straight to Kai, burying her face in his neck. Kai folded around her like armor made of love, a low, broken purr rolling out of him that sounded almost like crying. After a long moment she pulled back and looked up at Liam. Tears tracked silver down her lavender cheeks. My name is Rilke, she said. And you are very, very late. But you came anyway. She reached out one small hand, 6 fingers, trembling, and laid it over Liam's heart, right where Kai's paw had rested all night. Thank you, she whispered, for giving him a name again. He had forgotten he was allowed to have one. Liam's knees buckled. He sank to the floor in front of them both, human, guardian, child, and let the tears come. He cried for his mother who never saw alien sons. For the colony that would never understand this moment. For the lonely years that had led him to a cliff edge at exactly the right second. Rilke knelt too, pressing her forehead to his the way Kai had. Kai curled around them both, a living shield of fur and grief and impossible hope. Outside, far above the roots and the centuries, the forest held its breath. Inside the vault, 3 hearts, one human, one guardian, one archive, beat in the same broken, stubborn rhythm. Whatever came next, hunters, armies, the end of everything, it would have to go through all 3 of them. And Liam Everheart, who had spent his whole life fixing things that were never truly his, finally understood what it felt like to be needed for the simple, terrifying miracle of still being alive. Chapter 4, The Sound a Heart Makes When It Breaks Open. They stayed in the vault for 3 days. 3 days of borrowed time, measured in the slow drip of condensation from the crystalline ceiling and the soft glow of Rilke's skin when she dreamed. 3 days in which the outside world felt like a story someone else had told them once, long ago. Liam had expected panic, urgency, the thunder of pursuit. Instead there was only quiet so complete it rang in his ears like bells. Rilke needed the quiet. She had slept for 412 years, she said, counting them the way other children count birthdays. Her people, the Elyar, had hidden her here when the Kavari came. Her parents had sung her to sleep inside the pod with a lullaby that tasted like starlight and goodbye. She woke up speaking 6 languages, remembering the fall of 3 civilizations, and still afraid of the dark. Kai never left her side. He curled around her like a living fortress, only relaxing when her small hand was buried in the fur at his throat. When she cried, silent, silver tears that glowed faintly on her cheeks, he licked them away with the same reverence he had shown Liam on the riverbank. When she laughed, which was rare but bright as sunrise, his whole body trembled with a joy too big to fit inside muscle and bone. Liam watched them and felt something rearrange itself inside his chest, something that had been crooked since childhood. He had always fixed machines because machines never asked him to stay. These two asked nothing, yet gave him everything. On the second night, Rilke taught him the Elyar word for family. It was not a simple word. It carried weight the way mountains carry sky. It meant, those who choose to bleed for one another when no blood ties them. Those who stand between the dark and the ones they love, even when the dark has sharper teeth. She pressed her palm to his chest, then to Kai's, then to her own. Listen, she whispered. 3 heartbeats. Different rhythms, different worlds, yet somehow the same song. Liam cried then. Not the quiet tears of exhaustion, but the ugly, wrenching kind that tear their way out like shrapnel. He cried for every year he had spent convincing himself he didn't need anyone. For every message from Earth that arrived too late. For the way Kai had looked at him in the river, like Liam was the only solid thing left in a universe coming apart. Rilke crawled into his lap, small and warm and impossibly ancient. Kai laid his great head across both of them, a living blanket of starlight and muscle. They held him until the storm inside passed, until all that remained was the steady certainty that he would die before he let anything touch them. On the 3rd morning, the vault spoke. Not in words. In grief. The symbols on the walls bled from soft blue to urgent crimson. A low thrumming rose through the floor, the sound a dying star might make if it could scream. Kai was on his feet instantly, hackles raised, a snarl building that rattled Liam's teeth. Rilke went very still, violet eyes wide. They found us, she said, voice small. I hoped there would be more time. Liam's stomach dropped through the soles of his boots. How long? Minutes. Maybe less. He looked around the chamber, beautiful, ancient, defenseless. There was one door. One way in, one way out. The vault had been designed to hide, not to fight. Rilke stood, bare feet silent on the stone, and walked to a panel that hadn't been there yesterday. Her fingers moved over the symbols with the sureness of muscle memory older than humanity. A section of wall slid aside, revealing a narrow corridor lit by faint emergency gold. There is a back way, she said. Through the roots. My mother showed me in the dream teaching. But Kai cannot fit. Kai growled, not at her, never at her, but at the truth. His shoulders were too broad, his body built for battle, not escape tunnels meant for children. Liam felt the world narrow to a single point of cold clarity. Then we buy you time. Rilke spun, eyes blazing. No. You come with me. I'm slowing you down already, little star. You know it. He knelt so they were eye to eye. Take the crystal from your pod. Take the knowledge. Run. Find your mother's people, if any still live. That's the only thing that matters now. Tears welled again, but they were fierce this time. You are my people now. The words struck him like a physical blow. He cupped her small face in hands that still smelled of river water and engine grease. And you are mine, he said, voice cracking. Which is why you have to go. Kai made a sound, half roar, half-sob, and pressed his forehead hard against Liam's. The connection flared again, stronger this time, edged with desperation. Images. Rilke older, laughing under alien suns. Rilke safe, surrounded by others with lavender skin and kind eyes. Rilke looking back one day and understanding why they stayed. Liam wrapped his arms around Kai's neck, buried his face in starlight fur. "Take care of her," he whispered. "Love her enough for both of us." Kai's entire body shook. He licked Liam's cheek once, slow, deliberate, a promise sealed in salt and sorrow, then gently took the back of Rilke's tunic in his teeth and guided her toward the tunnel. She fought him. Small fists pounding against his shoulder, voice breaking on Liam's name over and over. But Kai was immovable. He looked back only once, green eyes shining with tears that would never fall, and dipped his great head in a gesture so deeply formal it felt like knighthood. Then they were gone. The corridor sealed behind them with a whisper of stone. Liam stood alone in the crimson-lit chamber, chest heaving, every heartbeat a countdown. He picked up the only weapon the vault offered, an ornate staff of black metal that hummed when he touched it, more ceremonial than practical, and walked to the main door. He thought of his mother's last message again. "Go somewhere that scares you." He smiled, small and crooked and utterly unafraid. The door exploded inward in a storm of fire and screaming metal. Kavari soldiers poured through, armor like void-given form, visors glowing blood-red. Their weapons tracked heat, movement, life. Liam stepped into the light. "Hey!" he shouted, voice steady even as his knees shook. "You're late. She's already gone." The first energy bolt took him high in the shoulder, spun him half around. Pain bloomed white-hot. The second burned a furrow across his ribs. He laughed, actually laughed, because the pain was real, and real meant he was still standing between them and the people he loved. He swung the staff. It connected with a helmet, sent the soldier staggering. Another blast caught his thigh and dropped him to one knee. Through the smoke and the screams, he thought he heard it, far away, deeper than bone. A child's voice calling his name like a prayer. A guardian's roar that shook the roots of the world. Liam smiled through blood. Worth it. The last thing he saw before darkness rushed in was the vault symbols flaring one final time, pure, brilliant white, as if the chamber itself refused to let him die unmourned. Then the light took him, gentle as a mother's hand, and for one perfect heartbeat he was weightless. He was home. Chapter 5, Ashes and Echoes. He did not die. Death would have been kinder. Instead, Liam woke to the taste of copper and the smell of burnt ozone. His body was a single, screaming wound. The left side of his chest felt caved in, his right leg twisted at an angle that made bile rise in his throat. The vault was dark now, only a few dying glyphs flickered like candles about to go out. The air tasted of scorched metal and something sweeter, lilac, maybe, or memory. He tried to call their names and only managed a wet cough that painted the floor red. Rilke. Kai. Gone. He had bought them minutes, maybe hours. Enough. It had to be enough. Liam dragged himself across the stone with his one working arm, leaving a dark smear behind him. Every inch was agony, but agony meant he was still breathing, and breathing meant the Kavari had not won yet. He laughed at that, a broken, bubbling sound, because it was the only victory left to him. He reached the dais where the stasis pod had stood. It was cracked open like an eggshell, frost still weeping from the seams. In its center lay the crystal shard Rilke had carried against her heart for 4 centuries. It pulsed once when his bloody fingers closed around it, soft, warm, alive. A child's voice, faint as starlight across vacuum, brushed the inside of his skull. "You promised you would follow." "I'm trying, little star," he rasped. "I'm trying." The shard flared, and suddenly the pain dimmed, muffled beneath a tide of warmth. Images poured into him, not memories this time, but directions. A map made of routes and rivers, tunnels that spiraled beneath the continent, an ancient Eliar failsafe older than the vault itself. A way out. A way to them. Liam closed his fist around the crystal until the edges cut his palm. Blood welled, dripped onto the shard, and the light inside it turned the same deep crimson as Hestia's sunset. He began to crawl. Time lost meaning. There was only forward, only the promise burning in his hand. The tunnel swallowed him, cool, damp, smelling of earth and distant rain. Roots brushed his face like blind fingers searching for the sun. Somewhere above, he heard the muffled thunder of Kavari dropships tearing the forest apart, but down here the only sounds were his own ragged breathing and the soft, steady pulse of the crystal guiding him. He did not know how many hours passed. Long enough for fever to settle in his bones. Long enough for infection to paint bright streaks up his arm. Long enough for delirium to whisper that he could lie down, just for a minute, just long enough to rest. He kept moving because Rilke's laugh still lived behind his eyes. Because Kai had trusted him with the weight of a name. Eventually the tunnel widened into a cavern lit by pale blue fungi that grew in perfect spirals. In its center waited a pool, black water, mirror still, reflecting stars that had no business being underground. Liam collapsed at the edge. The crystal slipped from his fingers and floated on the surface like a drop of liquid fire. The water rippled, and a face looked up at him, not his own. Rilke. Older now, maybe by days, maybe by months. Tears cutting silver tracks down lavender cheeks. Behind her, Kai's massive shape filled the cavern mouth, fur matted with blood and forest debris, one foreleg held gingerly off the ground. "You're hurt," she whispered, and the sound of it cracked what was left of Liam's heart. "I told you to run," he croaked. "We did. Kai wouldn't leave you behind. He felt you fall. He felt you stop breathing for 7 seconds, Liam. 7. Her voice broke on the last word. "He carried me 20 kilometers with a broken shoulder because he said dying alone was crueler than any Kavari weapon." Liam laughed, or tried to. It came out a sob. "Stubborn bastard." The crystal pulsed brighter. The pool began to glow from beneath, revealing a submerged archway of white stone carved with the same symbols that circled Kai's throat. Rilke's image reached toward him, palm open. "Come home, Liam. Please. The water remembers the ones who jump for love. It will carry you the rest of the way." He looked at the archway, then at the ruin of his body. "I don't think I can swim, little star." "You don't have to. Trust us. One more time." Liam closed his eyes. He thought of his mother's voice across light years of silence. "Go somewhere that scares you." He let himself fall forward. The water was warm. Impossibly warm. It closed over his head like an embrace he had been waiting his whole life to receive. Pain ebbed away, replaced by the gentle pressure of currents that knew exactly where to take him. He felt the crystal settle against his heart, beating in perfect rhythm with 2 others far ahead. Darkness folded around him, soft as Kai's fur, sweet as Rilke's lullabies. And for the first time since the river tried to claim them all, Liam Everheart let himself sink. He was not afraid. Somewhere ahead, a child was waiting with open arms. Somewhere ahead, a guardian roared his name like a battle cry and a prayer in the same breath. Somewhere ahead was the place hearts went when they refused to break. He followed the sound of them, both of them, through the dark water and the deeper dark, until light found him again. Gentle. Golden. Home. Chapter 6, The River That Gives Back. He woke inside the sun. Not the harsh red sun of Hestia Fifth, nor the cold white one that had burned his shoulders on earth. This was a gentler star, filtered through water thick as honey, cradling him the way a mother cradles a child who has walked too far. Liam opened his eyes and saw sky beneath him. He was floating on his back in a vast underground lake, its surface perfectly still, reflecting a ceiling of glowing quartz that looked like an inverted galaxy. The pain was gone. Not dulled, gone, as though someone had lifted every broken piece of him out, polished the cracks with starlight, and set them gently back together. He lifted his left hand. The burns, the torn flesh, the place where an energy bolt had punched through muscle, only faint silver lines remained, like scars drawn by moonlight. His right leg straightened without protest. When he breathed, the air tasted of rain on warm stone and something impossibly sweet. A ripple crossed the water. Kai. The guardian was swimming toward him, moving with the slow majesty of something born for oceans as much as forests. His fur floated around him in a halo of liquid color, indigo, violet, living silver, and his eyes burned that impossible green. One foreleg was still held slightly awkward, the shoulder swollen and bruised purple beneath the fur, but he was alive. Whole enough. Behind him, on a low island of white stone at the lake center, stood Rilke. She had grown. Not years, but days of terror and running had etched themselves into her small frame. Her silver-white hair hung to her waist now, tangled with leaves and glowing moss. The simple shift she wore, spun from light and memory by the vault's last gift, clung to her like a second skin. She was barefoot, filthy, beautiful, and crying so hard her whole body shook. Liam tried to speak and found his throat raw from disuse. All that came out was her name. Rilke. She ran. Not along the stone, she ran across the water itself, feet barely kissing the surface, each step sending rings of soft gold outward. Kai reached Liam first, nudging him with his great head until Liam's arms came up and wrapped around that thick neck. Warm. Real. Alive. Kai made a sound Liam had never heard before, a broken, keening note that was half sob, half song. Then he simply held Liam afloat, letting the human cling and shake and cry into fur that smelled of forest nights and desperate hope. Rilke crashed into them both. Her small body hit Liam's chest hard enough to drive the air from his lungs, arms, and legs wrapping around him like she would never let go again. She buried her face against his neck and sobbed in the old Elyar tongue, words that meant I thought you were gone forever, I thought I killed you, I thought love always ends in fire. Liam held her so tightly he felt her heartbeat fluttering against his own. He kissed the top of her tangled hair, tasted salt and moss and the faint sweetness that was only hers. I'm here, he whispered over and over, voice cracking. I'm here, little star. I followed you. I told you I would. Kai pressed closer, curling his massive body around them both until the three of them floated in a tangle of limbs and fur and impossible relief. The lake cradled them like it had waited centuries for exactly this reunion. Minutes or hours later, time had no meaning here, Rilke drew back just far enough to cup Liam's face in her small six-fingered hands. You died, she said, fierce and trembling. Your heart stopped. Kai felt it break. I think the river remembered, Liam answered, voice rough. It took me once. This time it gave me back. Rilke's eyes searched his, ancient and childlike at once. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, the way Kai had taught her. The way family did. The connection opened like a flower made of light. He saw everything they had endured while he lay dying in the vault. Kai carrying Rilke through endless nights, shoulder shattered by a Kavari rifle, refusing to rest because every second brought the hunters closer. Rilke singing the old songs to keep him awake, her voice cracking on tears. The two of them curled together in caves that wept cold water, sharing warmth, sharing terror, sharing the single stubborn belief that Liam was still coming. He felt Kai's grief when the bond went dark, raw, animal, devastating. He felt Rilke's refusal to let the guardian turn back, because she knew if Kai went to the vault he would die beside Liam's body and then no one would be left to carry the archive. And he felt the exact moment, deep beneath the roots, when the bond flickered back to life, faint as a heartbeat under snow, and Kai had roared so loudly the cavern shook, because Liam was breathing again. Liam pulled out of the memory gasping, tears streaming. He pressed his lips to Rilke's forehead, then to the soft fur between Kai's eyes. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry I left you alone. Kai rumbled, low and forgiving, and licked the tears from Liam's cheek with deliberate tenderness. Rilke laughed once, wet, shattered, perfect, and the sound echoed off the glowing ceiling like bells. We are together now, she said, as if it were the simplest truth in the universe. That is enough. They drifted to the island. The stone was warm beneath them, veined with living light. Around its edges grew tiny white flowers that opened only when the three of them lay close, releasing a scent like childhood summers and second chances. Liam sat with his back against Kai's uninjured side, Rilke curled in his lap like she had been made to fit there. For a long time no one spoke. There was no need. The silence was full of breathing, of hearts learning the same rhythm again. Eventually Rilke lifted her head. "The Kavari are still hunting," she said quietly. "They burned the forest for 3 days trying to find the vault. They know I'm awake. They know what I carry." Liam's arms tightened around her. "Then we keep moving. There is a ship," she said. "My mother's people left one. Hidden deeper. It will take us to the others, if any still live." Kai's ears flicked. A low growl rumbled, not fear, but readiness. Liam looked at them both, the child who had waited 400 years for someone to choose her, the guardian who had carried grief like armor across centuries, and felt something settle inside him, solid as bedrock. He stood, legs steady for the first time since the river, and offered Rilke his hand. "Then let's go home," he said. "All three of us. Together." Rilke took his hand. Kai rose beside them, shoulder to shoulder with the human he had chosen as pack. Above them, the quartz ceiling brightened, revealing a spiral staircase of white stone leading upward, toward air, toward sky, toward whatever waited beyond this sanctuary. They climbed. Behind them, the underground lake rippled once, gently, as though the planet itself were smiling. The river had taken. Now it had given back something far more precious. A family. Forged in water and fire, in dying and refusing to stay dead. Unbreakable. Chapter 7, The Ship That Waited. They walked for 2 days through corridors that had never known human feet. The stone gave way to pale metal that sang when they touched it, then to living crystal that breathed slow pulses of violet light. Every surface remembered the Elyar. Handprints glowed softly when Rilke passed, doors opened before she reached them, and once an entire wall unfolded into a garden of silver flowers that wept perfume when she cried. Kai limped, but would not let Liam carry him. Pride, or penance. Every time Liam offered his shoulder, the guardian only pressed his great head to Liam's chest in silent apology and kept walking. On the second night they found a chamber shaped like a teardrop. In its center floated a pool of liquid starlight. Rilke stepped in without hesitation. The light rose around her, washing away dirt, exhaustion, centuries of grief. When she stepped out, she looked exactly as she must have the day her parents sealed her away, 6 years old, barefoot, luminous, heartbreakingly brave. She did the same for Kai. The guardian lowered himself into the pool with a shuddering sigh. Light poured into his wounds, knitting torn muscle, straightening bone. When he rose, water streaming from his fur like liquid diamonds, he was whole again. He shook once, spraying them all, then bowed his head to Rilke in a gesture so deep it looked like worship. Liam went last. He expected pain, the cleansing fire of healing. Instead the light felt like his mother's hands on his fevered brow when he was small. It felt like the first time someone told him he was good at something that mattered. It felt like forgiveness he had never dared ask for. When he stepped out, Rilke was waiting with a simple tunic of midnight blue, woven from the same light threads as her own clothes. She helped him dress with solemn ceremony, fingers trembling only when she tied the cord at his throat. "You look Elyar now," she whispered. "I look like yours," he answered, and her smile broke the dark wide open. They reached the ship at dawn of the third day. It waited in a cavern so vast the ceiling was lost in clouds of pale mist. The vessel hung suspended in cradles of living crystal, long and graceful as a tear frozen mid-fall. Its hull was the color of deep space between stars, etched with silver runes that flared to life when Rilke approached. She placed both palms against the metal and closed her eyes. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the ship spoke, not with sound, but with memory. Images flooded them all, a young couple, lavender-skinned, silver-haired, standing exactly where they stood now. The woman heavy with child she would never hold. The man's hand on her belly, tears falling as he gave the final command. If she wakes alone, let the ship know she is loved. Let it carry her to whatever safety remains. Let it remember us. Rilke's knees buckled. Kai caught her before she hit the ground, curling around her while she sobbed without sound. Liam knelt too, arms around them both, holding the grief that belonged to people who had died 4 centuries before he was born. When the storm passed, Rilke stood. She did not wipe her tears, she let them fall like offerings. I'm not alone, she told the ship, voice steady. Look. She took Liam's hand. Took Kai's massive paw. Placed them together over her heart. These are my parents now. This is my guardian. Open for us. The ship answered with light. A ramp unfolded like a flower made of night. Inside, corridors of soft gold welcomed them. Seats grew from the floor when they entered the command circle, perfectly shaped for human, Elyar, and guardian. When Kai lay down, the deck rippled and formed a nest of warmth around him. Rilke moved to the central console. Her small fingers danced across crystals that lit at her touch. The ship woke fully, humming, eager, ancient, and young all at once. Liam watched her and felt pride so fierce it hurt. She was 6 years old and 412, terrified and fearless, the last archive of a murdered civilization and a child who still checked under the bed for monsters. She was his daughter in every way that mattered. Coordinates, he asked gently. She hesitated. There is a beacon. Weak. Very far. My mother said if the worst happened, the survivors would gather at the Nebula of Tears. But the Kavari control half the routes now. And, her voice cracked. What if no one is left? Liam stepped behind her, rested his hands on her shoulders. Kai rose and laid his great head beside her, green eyes steady. Then we will be the first, Liam said. And we will keep the fire burning until others find it. You are not the end, Rilke. You are the beginning. She turned and buried her face in his chest. He felt her nod against his heart. The ship sealed. Engines that had slept for centuries woke with a sound like distant thunder wrapped in lullabies. Through the forward viewport, crystal doors irised open, revealing a tunnel of blue-white light leading up through stone and root and soil, toward the wounded sky of Hestia Fifth. Rilke took the pilot's place. Liam sat beside her. Kai stretched across both their seats, a living bridge of warmth and muscle. Ready? She asked, voice small but unbroken. Liam laced his fingers through hers on the controls. Always. The ship rose. It moved like thought, gentle, unstoppable. Stone parted for it the way water once had. They burst into open air beneath a sky bruised with smoke. Far behind, the forest still burned where the Kavari had scoured for them. Ahead, the stars waited. Rilke engaged the star drive. Space folded around them with the soft inevitability of curtains closing on an old sorrow. Hestia Fifth fell away, a green and violet jewel shrinking to a spark. Liam looked at the two beings who had chosen him, one small hand in his, one massive head on his knee, and felt the last piece of his heart click into place. He had come to this world to fix machines. Instead he had been broken open and rebuilt into something better. A father. A protector. A man who finally understood what home really meant. The ship sang them forward into the dark, carrying 3 hearts that beat as one. Behind them, a planet turned beneath alien suns, forever changed because a human once jumped into a river for a creature with hopeless green eyes. Ahead, the Nebula of Tears glimmered, cold, distant, waiting. They went to meet whatever was left of hope. Together. Chapter 8, The Nebula of Tears. They reached the nebula on the 109th day. The ship slipped out of fold space into a storm of violet fire and newborn stars. Nebulae were supposed to be cold, but this one burned, great curtains of indigo and rose, threaded with silver lightning that sang in frequencies only Rilke could hear. At its heart hung a single, impossible structure, a lattice of living crystal and ancient hulls, braided together like the roots of some titanic tree. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, locked in an embrace that had lasted centuries. Elyar ships. Rilke's hands froze above the controls. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob, then she was running, bare feet slapping across the deck, Kai bounding after her, Liam only a step behind. The docking ring opened before they asked. Warm air, smelling of homeworld blossoms long extinct, rolled over them. And then the corridor was full of people. Lavender skin. Silver-white hair. Eyes the color of dawn. They poured from every direction, old, young, warriors in scarred armor, scholars with ink on their six-fingered hands, children who stared at Kai with open wonder and at Liam with something close to reverence. An elder stepped forward, robes the color of deep water, tears already streaming. "Little Archive," she whispered, voice breaking on the title. "You are late. We thought the silence had taken you too." Rilke walked straight into her arms. The elder folded around her like Rilke had always belonged there, and for a moment Liam thought the child would disappear inside that embrace forever. But Rilke pulled back, turned, and held out her hand to him. "This is Liam," she said, loud enough for the entire ring to hear. "He jumped into the Gallera for my guardian. He died for me and refused to stay dead. He carried me when my legs forgot how to walk. He is Elyar where it matters." She placed Liam's hand in the elder's. "He is my father." Silence fell, thick and trembling. Then the elder did something no one expected. She knelt. One by one, every soul in the ring followed until the floor was a sea of bowed heads and shining eyes. Liam's throat closed. He looked at Kai, who stood proud and tall, tail curled gently around Rilke's waist, and saw the guardian dip his great head in solemn acknowledgement. The elder rose, took Liam's face between her palms, and pressed her forehead to his. "Welcome home, Liam of Earth," she said. "The circle is whole again." That night they held the remembering. In the great central dome, beneath a sky of living nebular fire, Rilke stood on a dais of crystal and opened herself. She let the archive pour out of her, 400 years of songs, equations, histories, lullabies, the smell of rain on the lost homeworld, the taste of fruit that no longer grew anywhere in the universe. Every Elyar present wept as memory became flesh again, as ghosts walked among them wearing the faces of parents and children and lovers long turned to stardust. When it was done, Rilke was lighter. Younger. Simply a child again. She ran to Liam and Kai, threw her arms around both their necks, and laughed until she couldn't breathe. Later, much later, they stood on an observation deck that looked out into the heart of the storm. Rilke slept between them, curled against Kai's warmth, one small hand fisted in Liam's tunic as though even dreams couldn't risk letting go. Liam rested his head on Kai's broad shoulder. The guardian's breathing was slow, content, the rumble of distant thunder that had finally found its sky. Below them, the nebula burned on, eternal, wounded, and healing. "I used to think home was a place you were born," Liam said quietly. "Turns out it's a choice you keep making, every day, even when it hurts." Kai turned his head, pressed his forehead to Liam's in the old way. A single image, gentle as snowfall. 3 figures on a cliff above a roaring river, silhouetted against twin suns. One human. One guardian. One child with starlight in her veins. Forever. Liam smiled, tears slipping silently into Kai's fur. Somewhere far behind them, across light years and grief, the Gallera River still carved its ancient scar through Hestia Fifth. Colonists still warned each other to stay away. They never understood that sometimes the most dangerous thing a river can do is give you exactly what you jumped in to find. Love, fierce enough to refuse even death. A family, forged in water and fire and impossible hope. Liam closed his eyes, felt Rilke's heartbeat against his ribs, Kai's warmth along his side, and finally, let the last piece of his old loneliness drift away into the nebula's fire. They had crossed oceans of stars for this moment. They were home. And the stars, ancient and kind, kept their secret. That somewhere, on a small green and violet world, a river still remembers the day a human jumped, and the universe decided some stories are too stubborn to end. The end.